Welcome to Engage. I'm your host, Todd Hanson. Thank you for joining me as we tell the story of engaged learning at Utah Valley University. On this program, we showcase examples of students who are learning by doing. Today, we're spending some time with UVU's Engineering, Graphics, and Design Technology Department. For several years, EGDT has had the incredible opportunity to travel to Jerusalem and help rediscover an ancient community at the site of Bet Lehi. That's coming up on Engage. At an ancient archaeological site in Israel, EGDT students at UVU were tasked with laying out a complex survey grid above ground and a three-dimensional scan of the underground tombs and tunnels. The work done at the site allowed archaeologists to see Bet Lehi as never before. Our students in the digital media program followed them on their journey. Here's a sneak peek.
The site of Bet Lehi is located about 17 miles southwest of Jerusalem. In the ancient period, one of the main roads that led from Gaza, from the Mediterranean to Jerusalem through Heliotropolis, Bet Guvrin today, passed just below the site, which makes the site located in a very, very central place in the Judean hills. There's many significance in this site. It goes back all the way to the Chalcolithic period. We found here axes from the 4th millennium BCE. And then we found up in the hill, on what we call the Biblical Tell, we found pottery from Bronze Age 2, and mainly from Iron Age 2. It goes together probably with the two burial caves that was found over here in 1960 and known as the Jerusalem Cave. It's one of the most important burial caves ever found in Israel.
I'm here with EGDT professor Darren Taylor. Darren, thanks for joining us. First question for you, am I pronouncing this correctly? Bet Lehi?
You are.
Okay.
You are. Some people say Lehi instead of Lehi, but in Israel they'll say Bet Lehi.
Okay. Well, that makes sense for Utahns to say Lehi, right? Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, tell me what this project is all about.
Well, it's an archaeology site that sits about 22 miles south and west of Jerusalem. It was first discovered back in 1961 when an Israeli military bulldozer was building a road and fell through the roof of a cavern. And as they were extracting that piece of equipment, they got down inside this chamber and found some amazing things within that chamber. So much so that there's some writing that they actually removed from that chamber, and it is now on display in the Israeli Museum in Jerusalem.
And how were you able to go in and help out?
We were first contacted back in 2009 by the Bet Lehi Foundation and the Hebrew University, and they asked if we could assist them in mapping and documenting all the things that they're finding on this site. And when we first arrived at the site, we thought, oh, we'll be able to do this in a few days. Well, having been to the site many times, I think it might be several years before this will ever be completed.
So this program, though, is more than just this one project in Bet Lehi. Tell me about the program as a whole and what all you do.
Engineering, Graphics, and Design Technology, it's a mouthful,
Yeah.
but basically it's drafting and design and surveying. So in our program, students learn how to do architectural sets of plans, mechanical drafting, electrical drafting, structural drafting, and surveying and civil. And the thing that's been great about this project is it's applying all of those skills that they're learning in the classroom. So our architectural students, for example, are the ones that are doing the plans under the direction of Robert Price, one of our faculty members. That visitor center will sit on that site, and it will be of a design of UVU. That makes us proud as faculty. Our surveying students are the ones that are over there mapping the site and coming back and drawing the documentation for the archaeologists.
And how was it that they asked you to partake in this? I mean, how did they know about UVU and its program? It's
a good question. That's what I asked the individual when he called us. Alan Rudd, who is the president of the Bet Leahy Foundation, gave us a call about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and asked us if we'd be interested to sit down and talk about this site. I got to be honest with you, we get 2 to 3 of those calls a week, and just because of time and resources, we can't always say yes to every project. But this one was in Israel, and that piqued our interest. So we set up a meeting, we sat down, and he took us through what they would like us to accomplish. He felt that our skill sets fit exactly what they needed to accomplish on that site, so we decided to move forward.
So, natural next question is, what have you accomplished thus far?
Well, up to this point, we've gone over 3 times, with our next trip here in just less than a month away. The first few trips, our initial goal was to establish a survey grid on top of the surface of the site. It's a large site. It's as large as UVU's campus, over 50 acres.
Wow.
So we set up a control grid that we can use to survey all the underground, all the above ground structures, chambers, tombs, and also to help us survey in the future for the parking lots, the roads, the visitor center, the pathways for the folks that come to visit the site. We've done that. We've done a lot of the 3D scanning, which we'll talk more about, but an amazing new technology that's taking archaeology to the next level. And we've started designing the visitor center.
So from here on out, then what do you hope to accomplish at that site, and how long do you think you're going to be there?
I would say that the site is roughly 10 to 15% excavated. They can't dig a hole without finding something new. In fact, we're finding it a challenge to place the visitor center on the site, because anytime we come up with a location and they go to do some tests, they find another structure. So that's our challenge. We joke about designing the visitor center on wheels so we can move it around, but that's one thing that we need to get established, is the location of that visitor center. And we still have 75–80% of the site to still survey and map.
And you're not archaeologists.
Absolutely not. We leave that up to the professionals, but we are mappers and surveyors, so we can help work with the archaeologists to document what's there.
It must be fascinating to you, though, to see what's there and to see what they're finding.
I've always had a passion. That's always been kind of my side passion, is archaeology, and this was a dream come true to merge my skills with what the archaeologists are doing. We work alongside Oren Gutfeld, the lead archaeologist from the Hebrew University, becoming a very well-known archaeologist in Israel. So much so that he is the one that's been given the current permit to dig under the Western Wall or dig at the Western Wall. And when you're over there observing him, it's just an amazing thing to watch with his knowledge. It's been an awesome opportunity for our students as well to get to meet him and work alongside him.
Okay, when the students are there, specifically their boots on the ground, what is it that they're doing?
Well, the first team of students that we took over primarily were surveyors. They were helping to get the initial survey done so that we could start to set up what we call a control grid on the surface of the ground. A lot of this site is underground, and when it's underground, you've got to be able to bring your survey control down underneath the ground and keep track of everything. It basically helps bring the whole site into the 3D model. So that was one of the first goals. We were also doing some 3D scanning, some new high-tech equipment, $150,000 piece of equipment, which will actually do a 3-dimensional scan of the chambers and the tombs. And our students were starting the initial scanning of the site. This group that we're going to be taking over on this next trip will be a mixture of architecture students as well as surveying students, so we can start focusing on the visitor center, some of the other structures that are going to be built to protect some of the things that have been exposed. And again, our surveyors will be mapping what's on the surface and underneath. All
right, fascinating stuff, way over my head. When we come back, we'll have 2 of the students that were there for this incredible experience. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Engage. We're here with Professor Darren Taylor and 2 of his students, Dave and Kevin. Guys, this opportunity, incredible. What did you think when you found out you got to go to Israel for this?
I was jumping at the chance to do it. I remember when I was in class, and it was just a prospect at that point of, hey, we think there's this project coming up where we're going to allow students to go over to Israel and be a part of this archaeology project. And I knew right then I wanted to be a part of it.
How about you?
I thought they were kidding. when I was in the office with one of the professors and he just mentioned, hey, do you want to go to Israel with us? I said, sure, when are we going? And he said, no, I'm serious. We're really thinking about going. And I was all in and then realized I might need permission from my wife afterward, but sure. I was all in.
And when you decided to get into this program to study it, what drew you to it?
Initially, I wanted to go into architecture. And because of the diversity of the program here at UVU, you know, they offer so many different courses where you can learn civil drafting and pipe drafting and mechanical drafting. And it really opened my horizons and offered a whole new world to me. And I really enjoyed the civil drafting, which I think is a big part of why I was involved with this project.
And how about you, Kevin?
I was in it for the survey aspect. That's what I do. I like surveying. It's what I do for a living. And I was taking some classes here to further my education. And so to go to Israel and actually technically do the same thing I'm doing here, but instead of sites that are 80 years old for an old fence, it's 2,000 years old. But to set up a map and a grid to find out how stuff is interrelated to each other, so that really intrigued me. And besides, it's in Israel.
Yeah, and that's pretty darn neat. So I'm curious about the practicality of it all and what you're doing here in college and relating that to what you're going to eventually do professionally.
I guess it's, in essence, it's the same.
Yeah.
We went to Israel and we took or used the same equipment and the same total station, the same survey equipment and the scanner, the tripods that get used on real jobs here to survey and delineate property boundaries or do construction and subdivisions. So it was the same technology, it was just being used in a different purpose that was kind of new to all of us. We had never used the equipment for archaeological excavations or anything like that, but I guess the technology and the focus was the same. It was just a whole new aspect of it.
Yeah. And Dave, what's been the most satisfying part for you to be a part of this project in Israel?
You know, the thing about doing the classes and learning the material there is, sure, we get to go out and we get to practice with the equipment, similar to what Kevin has said. You know, we're using the tripod and the levels and all of that equipment. But when we get to Israel, again, we're using that equipment, but it's tying everything that we've learned from our classes together.
It sounds very technical, probably way over my head. Yeah, that's why I was a broadcasting major, right? But it sounds like a ton of fun, too. Tell me about that. It's not just a bunch of hard work.
It was a lot of fun. And we were able to mingle in a little bit of the tourist attractions and just, you know, being a Westerner to Israel for your first time with the work. Because this site was located on a military base, they'd only let us on certain days. And there were just a couple days they said you can't go here, so you go to the Sea of Galilee or Masada. We went to Old City Jerusalem, and it was fun. And you were there with people that you kind of knew you'd had a class with, but other people were brand new that were in the digital media department or something. And so you got to meet new people and whole new experiences, new food, travel restrictions, you know, the whole TSA type thing. And so there was a lot of newness to the whole experience.
Yeah, and I'm sure you didn't mind at all when they said, oh, I'm sorry, you can't work today. You have to go sightsee.
No, not really. But you know, they told us that up front. We kind of knew that we were staying in Jerusalem, then we traveled to the site every day. So you get back and you're tired, but you can be tired in 3 weeks when you're home. Let's be, you know, right now, let's go to the old city and haggle in the markets, or let's try some new food or something else. But yeah, you still, I mean, you can talk about all you want, but when you're there, it's totally different.
Oh yeah, and everybody has expectations about the way something's going to be, and you think it's going to be one thing, but it never turns out to be that way. What were some of the challenges and interesting things that happened to you while you were out there on the site?
Well, from an administrative side, I would say one of the first things that we were concerned about, and always so, is the safety of our students. When we first went to Israel, we were really worried about the logistics, getting the students from point A to point B, and did we feel safe, and so forth. But having gone over there 3 times now, I feel just as safe there as I do here, so that's no longer an issue. We worry about our equipment, some pretty high-tech equipment. We've seen some dropped on the runways as they were changing planes, and that always makes you a little nervous that things are going to work when you get there. And they have so far, knock on wood. Probably the biggest challenge is, as Kevin has mentioned, applying things that we're teaching our students right here in the classroom, applying them in a totally different situation that we normally don't do. We just don't do archaeology surveys here too often in the Utah area. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge, is applying the skills that we teach our students, applying it in a different situation on this archaeology site.
Yeah, and this show is all about that engaged learning and what you are experiencing while you're learning all of this stuff. When you're not going to Israel on amazing archaeological dig sites, what sort of practical things are you doing here?
Well, you know, Todd, you can teach a student about surveying in the front of a classroom, and we do that. I think it was Ralph Waldo Emerson that said, the skill to do is learned by doing. And that's indeed what these guys are doing in Israel. But here in our own environment, here at UVU and out on our campus, we don't just talk about projects, we take them out and give them a real world project to work on, and that's when the learning really starts to take place. And it's fun to teach them something here on campus and then take them over to Israel, and as a faculty member, that's when you kind of start to feel that pride of watching your students grow. These guys are absolutely awesome, cream of the crop. We haven't had a bad student over there yet, and I've been very excited to watch them learn and to apply their skills. And I got to tell you, they teach us sometimes too.
I'm sure. Yeah, not a bad student. That must mean there must be some great instruction going on. I'm curious for you guys what the future holds professionally for you two.
Currently, I'm working for a company that it has estimating software that is sketch-based. And one of the programs I learned here at UVU was a program called Revit. And that basically allows you to design a 3D model of a home or a commercial building. And you know, that's basically something I'm using every day at work.
And Kevin?
I work as a land surveyor today, and that's what I'm going to continue to do as a profession. So to take a few more classes and to get the experience to go over to Israel and actually do the same thing over there but different. So it's an opportunity to use the equipment, but to work with totally new people in a circumstance where you can't just run back to the office or make a quick phone call. You've got to have all your equipment and the batteries and the chargers, and you take them from the hotel onto the bus to the site and back and clean them and take care of them. And then you come back here and try to decipher everything you've got and hope you didn't forget anything, because it's not just a quick drive downtown or a phone call or a Google Earth away. You're a long ways away. So I'll stay with the survey field. And this was just a really great experience to kind of see how the survey would relate in another profession.
And as with most professions, things are always evolving, especially technology, and I'm sure technology has had a huge impact on what you do in this program.
It does. In fact, we have a program that's really tough to stay up to date. That's probably one of the biggest challenges for our faculty, is continually learning new equipment, new software. Things change every single year. I would say the newest technology that we've brought to Israel is our three-dimensional scanning. And it's a fascinating technology. It's very expensive, as I've mentioned before, but it allows us to, I would say, in a quick way, we could go out and within 5 minutes with our 3D scanner collect over about 7 million surveyed points. And in the old days, that would take you probably 4 weeks of straight, non-stop work.
Okay, we're going to talk more about that, and we're going to talk about 3D printing. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about Bet Leahy. Welcome back to Engage. Before we went to break, we were talking about 3D technology and the technological improvements in your area. And specifically, we talked a little bit about a printer. And I think of a printer as something that prints something on a piece of paper. You guys think of printers differently, don't you?
We have the technology to actually take this scanner that we were talking about, set it up inside of, for example, a ritual bath that's been excavated, and turn that scanner on, and with the laser technology, it'll scan the room, collecting millions of points. From there, that data can be uploaded into some software. We have a faculty member, Dan Perry, that has a really good expertise in that area and has been assisting the students with that. Well, that software then can take that, if you will, that chamber, that tomb, whatever you've found, and send it to an ABS plastic printer. Now, obviously, we're not going to print it out full scale, but we can shrink it down, like the example that's here on the table. We can shrink it down, and it is literally an actual replica of the ritual bath. Now, We have cut a window open so that you can actually see inside. This would all be underground. And
how far underground would this be?
this had about 8 feet of hard limestone above it to the surface of the earth, and then the rest of it is a soft limestone. That's what's unique about this site. Most of it is underground. So they've chiseled all of these buildings and tombs and chambers underneath the Earth's surface, which these guys will agree is very nice because it's cool and protected, not up on the surface where it's hot and humid. But anyways, the 3D technology is taking archaeology to the next level. Archaeologists traditionally do their reports in book form where they have drawings and figures. They're not quite sure how to handle this actual 3D model of what they're finding over in the field. So they were very excited about it, and in fact asked us last year to go in and do a presentation to the Hebrew University about this technology, and in which we did.
Wow. So Dave, what does it take to create that? I mean, where have you got sensors, and how many do you have, and all that?
Okay. So day one when we arrived on site, I worked with Dan Perry, who is another one of the professors here. He's kind of the guru of the 3D scanner in the department. And then myself, along with Ryan Phillips, another one of our students, worked primarily in the ritual bath here. And so to even generate this model, to even get it started, we actually had to set the scanner up above the surface, do a scan there. We then moved the scanner down a set of stairs right here to the opening of this ritual bath. And that allows us to tie the scan in from above the ground. As we start coming down underneath the surface, that allows us to tie that scan in. And then to get the actual scanning within the ritual bath itself, we move that scanner inside to several locations. And that allows us to pick up all of the points. You know, we actually spent probably a full day just getting the data for this ritual bath.
And what are the practical applications beyond archaeology for this 3D technology?
You know, beyond archaeology, really the sky's the limit with the 3D scanner. We could take this studio, for example, and set the scanner up in here, and it would take about 7 minutes, and we would have a full 3D model of this entire studio. And so we're finding that this technology is very useful in subterranean features where we can't use GPS, and it's just a great new technology.
Now, Darren, this site obviously has some religious significance for people in this area, actually many religions. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Surely. This particular site has a lot of meaning to many different peoples and cultures. There was at one time a Muslim village on this site, a Jewish village on this site. There was a Christian chapel, many believe perhaps a temple on this site as well. And even the LDS faith has an interest in this site. They believe there could be some Book of Mormon ties with this particular location. As far as UVU and our students, we look at it strictly as the educational side of the project. We're going to let the archaeologists and the biblical scholars decide what it is or isn't.
Incredible opportunity. When we're talking about engaged learning, what does engaged learning mean to you, having had these sort of opportunities?
I know the answer to that, but I want to hear it, I want to hear it from our students.
You want to hear it from them first and then get your opinion? Okay, this is quiz time, guys. This wouldn't be a final test, but it's a test nonetheless.
I think engaged learning is actually taken the schoolwork into a real-world application, where you would actually prepare for a career or to do something that would have professional application, not just a textbook, something that might actually test the skills where you can't just ask a class member, you can't read a book. You've actually got to do something hands-on with the real-life equipment as if it were, and in this case it really is, a real-life project that matters, where time and costs and materials really are factors you have to take into.
Oh, that's a good answer. And I'm still curious about your answer on what you think engaged learning is all about, from the professor's perspective.
You know, some classrooms it's tough to bring in what we would call engaged learning, but we do our absolute best in our program to do that. So from a math class I teach, a civil design class that I teach, instead of just talking about a project, I assign them a project that's very capable of being the very first thing they might see on the job site when they're hired with an employer. And I try and make that classroom as real world as I possibly can. And to me, that's what engaged learning is all about. It's got to be hands-on, it's got to be high pressure. It can't just be read chapter 1 and do the problems in the back of the book. They actually need to do a project that they're going to see in the real world when they get a job.
Dave, this again is a great opportunity, but it's just a school project, a really neat school project to go to Israel. Beyond that, how has it changed you, do you think, as a person to have this experience?
You know, number one, maybe a little bit of stardom. I'm getting phone calls and emails from all of my friends saying, hey, I just saw you on YouTube. And I'm like, really? For what? And they said, that Israel project you were a part of. That aside, you know, put that on the back burner. I've been really happy to be a part of this program, and I think it's opened up a lot of opportunities for me going forward. Definitely it's a booster for the resume, and I look forward to continuing my education here.
Great. Fascinating stuff. Thank you guys for joining us. We could talk for a long time about this, but unfortunately we're out of time. And thank you for joining us on Engage. Join us next time when we highlight more engaged learning opportunities here at Utah Valley University.